Imagine you are feeding a newborn baby a bottle of formula.
Right, which you do multiple times a day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you are fully expecting it to build strong, healthy bones. You're providing calcium. But now imagine that the specific fat used to keep that formula shelf stable is actively chemically reacting inside their tiny intestines.
It's a pretty horrifying thought.
It is. It's literally binding to the calcium you think you're providing.
Yeah.
It turns into this, soap-like substance, and it's completely flushed down their diaper.
Yeah, the baby absorbs almost no calcium from it.
Right. And worse, they scream from the resulting stomach pain. But here's the craziest part. In European manufacturing, that specific ingredient is heavily restricted. But in the United States, it's just the standard.
It is a really jarring juxtaposition. I mean, we naturally assume that infant nutrition operates on this universal binary standard of safety.
Right, like safe is safe no matter where you are.
Exactly. Especially when we see these seemingly identical products sitting on grocery store shelves globally. But when you look at the actual biochemical engineering behind these products, you realize we are dealing with two entirely divergent philosophies.
Divergent philosophies of, human biology and manufacturing.
Yes.
Well, welcome to this deep dive. I'm so glad you are here with us. We are unpacking a profoundly impactful regulatory and biological landscape today.
And we are pulling all of this from the research and data recently highlighted on Gary Brecka's Ultimate Human podcast.
Exactly. We are exploring the stark differences between the foundational ingredients that are legally allowed in baby formula in the U.S. versus Europe.
And, to be perfectly clear right at the top, our goal here isn't to take a political stance.
No, not at all. We aren't here to debate international trade policy or endorse any specific formula brand.
Right. Our mission is to just act as your objective guides through this massive biochemical maze.
Because we want to understand the mechanisms, the actual how and why behind these ingredient choices, so that you are equipped with the absolute best data to make your own decisions.
And that biological baseline is exactly where we need to start. Because to understand why a specific carbohydrate or fat is problematic, we first have to establish what a formula is attempting to replicate in the first place.
Right. What is the actual goal of the product?
Exactly. And the gold standard, biologically speaking, is the human breast milk matrix.
Matrix, not just a recipe.
Right. I intentionally use the word matrix. Breast milk isn't simply this, collection of isolated macronutrients floating around in some water.
It's a lot more complex than that.
It is a highly complex, dynamic, bioactive fluid. I mean, it contains living cells, immunological factors, complex oligosaccharides.
Basically all the instructions a body needs.
Yeah, precisely structured lipids and proteins that are designed to orchestrate the explosive growth and neurological development of an infant.
During, the absolute most critical window of their life. Right? Because an infant is practically doubling their body weight. And they are building entirely new neural pathways at a rate they will literally never again experience.
It's a massive architectural project.
Yeah, so the formula has to provide the raw materials for that. But the data from the podcast points to a really massive tension here, a tension between the science of human biology and the economics of industrial scale.
That is the defining conflict here. I mean, in the U.S. market, the formulation of these products heavily weights three economic criteria.
Cost effectiveness, scalability, and stability, right?
Exactly. Cost effectiveness, scalability of production, and extreme shelf stability. The ingredients need to be cheap to source. They need to be easy to blend in massive industrial vats.
And they have to sit in a warehouse forever.
Right. Capable of sitting in warehouses for months or even years without oxidizing or separating.
Which makes total sense if you are manufacturing, say, a plastic lawn chair. But we were talking about human tissue construction here.
Yeah, building a human being. And the European approach operates on an entirely different regulatory framework.
They call it the precautionary principle, right?
Precisely. Europe heavily prioritizes what we can call a biomimetic approach, alongside strict clean label regulations.
Biomimetic, meaning mimicking biology.
Exactly. Their goal is to replicate the molecular structure of that breast milk matrix as closely as current technology allows.
Even if it's harder to do.
Right. This inherently requires a deliberate move away from synthetic components and industrial workarounds, even if it totally compromises that long-term shelf stability or drives up production costs.
It sounds like U.S. manufacturers are building a house with the absolute cheapest, most durable materials that just happen to look like brick.
That's a great way to put it.
And Europe is over there insisting on actual, real brick. But let me push back for a second. If the basic macronutrients are technically in the can, Does the source of those nutrients really matter that much for an infant?
It matters immensely.
So let's look at the primary energy source then, carbohydrates. I think there's a really common misconception here that a carb is just a carb.
Right, like energy is just energy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the data regarding high fructose corn syrup and sucrose in U.S. formulas completely dismantles that idea.
It absolutely dismantles it. And, it comes down to metabolic pathways.
Walk us through that.
So many U.S. formulas utilize high fructose corn syrup, or HFCS, because, like we said, it provides an incredibly cheap, highly stable source of rapid energy.
Right.
But we have to look at what actually happens in the infant's liver when that specific molecule arrives.
Because it's not the same as standard sugar.
No. When a standard carbohydrate like glucose enters the liver, it encounters a regulatory enzyme called phosphofructokinase.
Phosphofructokinase. Okay, that's a mouthful.
Yeah, but you can just think of this enzyme as a metabolic traffic light.
Okay, a traffic light. I like that.
It regulates the flow of energy, it ensures the liver only processes what it currently needs, and then it stores the rest as glycogen for later.
But fructose doesn't play by those rules, does it?
Not at all. Fructose bypasses that traffic light entirely. It uses a totally different enzyme called fructokinase, which has zero regulatory feedback loop.
Zero.
None. It dumps the entire energetic load directly into the liver's mitochondria all at once.
Wow. So the system is just instantly overwhelmed.
Exactly, with way more energy than it can possibly use or store. So the liver has no choice but to initiate a process called de novo lipogenesis.
De novo lipogenesis, meaning literally making new fat.
Yes. It converts that fructose directly into triglycerides.
That is just a staggering biological trade-off. We're looking at a scenario where a manufacturing convenience is fundamentally rerouting a baby's metabolism.
Yeah, it's forcing the liver to immediately manufacture fat.
And the downstream effects of de novo lipogenesis have to be severe.
They are. It places an immense burden on the organ, contributing to the very early stages of fatty liver disease.
In an infant. That is wild.
And furthermore, the pancreas has to hypercompensate for these massive unregulated metabolic spikes. It does that by pumping out vast amounts of insulin.
To try to clear all that out.
Right. And over time, this constant flooding of insulin blunts the cellular receptors, which is the foundational mechanism of insulin resistance.
Setting the stage for type 2 diabetes.
Exactly. In young kids.
Look at the data from the 2021 study Brecka brought up in the source material. I mean, it completely shifts the paradigm on how we view infant growth.
It really does.
It shows that these specific added sugars, HFCS and sucrose, directly contribute to rapid infant weight gain. And I really want us to pause here because culturally we have a massive blind spot about this.
Oh, absolutely. The chunky baby phenomenon.
Right. If someone sees a very round, chunky baby, the immediate reaction is universally positive. Look at those rolls. What a healthy, thriving baby.
It's the classic archetype of successful infant feeding. We are biologically wired to view rapid infant weight gain as a sign of security and health.
Right, because historically, a skinny baby was in danger. But if that weight gain is being driven by de novo lipogenesis from industrial fructose, it's not a sign of thriving.
Yeah, no, not at all.
It's a sign of metabolic derangement. Let's use an analogy to make this clear. Think of how a city manages its power grid.
Okay.
What a baby actually needs is something like a steady, reliable hydroelectric dam. It takes time to process the water, but it provides a smooth, sustained output of electricity.
Keeps the city running flawlessly.
Right. High fructose corn syrup is like hitting the city's power grid with a massive concentrated lightning strike.
Boom, just overloading the system.
Exactly. It's a huge surge of instant energy that blows out the transformers. In this case, it overwhelms the liver.
And then the body has to frantically build emergency batteries.
The new fat cells.
Right, to absorb the surge and prevent a total system crash. That perfectly illustrates adipocyte hyperplasia.
Which is the rapid creation of new fat cells.
Yes. The infant isn't just storing temporary energy, they are permanently altering their metabolic architecture.
Because those cells don't just go away.
Right. Those newly created fat cells don't just disappear. They become endocrinologically active tissue that will literally predispose that child to obesity for the rest of their life.
So how does Europe power the grid? If they severely restrict these industrial added sugars, what is their alternative?
Well, the European mandate largely requires lactose as the primary and often sole carbohydrate.
Lactose, which is what is actually in breast milk.
Exactly. Lactose is a disaccharide, and it is the exact sugar naturally synthesized in human breast milk.
And mechanically, why does lactose not overwhelm the liver the way HFCS does?
Because of its molecular structure. Lactose requires the enzyme lactase to slowly cleave the molecule apart in the intestine.
Before it can even be absorbed into the bloodstream.
Exactly. So this creates a highly controlled, time-released energy curve.
Ah, so it avoids the lightning strike.
Right. It provides the necessary caloric density for the infant's brain and body to grow, but the steady absorption rate completely avoids that massive insulin spike.
It completely bypasses that de novo lipogenesis pathway we talked about.
Yes, it respects the biological traffic lights.
It's just a completely different approach to engineering the product.
Yeah.
So, okay, if HFCS throws the baby's metabolic energy into chaos, what happens when that compromised metabolism tries to actually build tissue?
That's where we get into the building blocks, the proteins.
Right. Which leads us right into the issue of infant milk allergies. And this is where the differences between the US and Europe become quite alarming.
Yeah, this is a big one. When an infant exhibits a sensitivity or allergy to standard cow's milk formula, manufacturers have to find an alternative protein source.
Obviously.
In the U.S. market, the default, highly scalable solution has historically been soy protein isolate.
Because it's cheap and abundant.
Exactly. It's cheap, it's everywhere, and it easily hits the required protein macronutrient numbers on the nutritional panel.
Wait, hold on. We spent the last decade being told soy is the ultimate health food.
I know, it sounds counterintuitive.
I mean, every coffee shop pushes soy lattes. We eat enema for heart health. Tofu is a staple of a clean diet. How can something that is pushed as a premium plant-based health food for adults be an endocrine disruptor for a baby?
It seems like a massive contradiction, but it comes down to the pharmacology of receptor affinity and the concept of biological dosing.
Okay, break that down for us.
Soy contains high concentrations of phytoestrogens. These are naturally occurring plant compounds, specifically isoflavones like genistein and daidzein.
And they share a striking molecular resemblance to estrogen.
Yes, exactly. Because of this structural similarity, they can enter the human bloodstream, bind to estrogen receptors, and mimic the hormone's effects.
So they are literal hormonal keys fitting into the body's locks.
That's a perfect way to visualize it.
But why is it fine for a 30-year-old adult and dangerous for a 3-month-old baby?
In an adult, you have a fully mature endocrine system. You're producing massive amounts of endogenous estrogen.
So the body's own estrogen outcompetes the plant stuff.
Right. It easily outcompetes the plant-based phytoestrogens for those receptors. Furthermore, an adult's body mass is huge.
So a splash of soy milk in my coffee is basically nothing.
It represents a totally negligible dose. But an infant might weigh 10 or 15 pounds. Their baseline endogenous sex hormone levels are incredibly low.
So their estrogen receptors are wide open.
Wide open and highly sensitive.
And the formula is their only food.
Yeah.
They're consuming it like 6 to 8 times a day.
Exactly. When you adjust for body weight, an infant exclusively fed soy formula is receiving an astronomically high daily dose of these estrogen-mimicking compounds.
Their delicate endocrine pathways are suddenly just flooded.
Yes. And the research points to this prolonged, high-level exposure fundamentally disrupting normal hormonal development.
And the source material highlights some really specific, scary reproductive concerns here.
It does. For males, this binding can suppress testosterone pathways. This can potentially delay puberty and alter reproductive organ development. For females, the constant estrogenic signaling can artificially accelerate puberty and lead to complex reproductive issues later in life.
We are essentially performing an uncontrolled endocrinology experiment on a developing nervous and reproductive system simply because soy isolate is cheaper to extract.
It's deeply concerning when you look at the mechanism.
So how does the European medical model approach this? Because European babies obviously develop dairy sensitivities too. They aren't immune to allergies.
No, of course not. But in Europe, soy protein isolate is rarely found on a standard grocery shelf.
Really? It's that restricted?
Yeah, its use is highly restricted. It's generally only prescribed under strict medical supervision for very specific metabolic disorders.
Like what?
Like classic galactosemia, where lactose is entirely contraindicated and can be fatal.
Ah, okay. So for just a standard cow's milk allergy, what do they use?
They rely on extensively hydrolyzed dairy proteins.
Hydrolyzed, meaning broken down, right?
Precisely. They take the naturally occurring whey and casein proteins, the exact types of proteins found in mammalian milk.
And they do what to them?
They use enzymes to snip the protein chains into tiny microscopic fragments.
So the baby's immune system doesn't recognize it as a dairy allergen anymore.
Exactly. But the body still gets the biologically correct amino acid profile.
That is brilliant. It completely bypasses the allergic response while maintaining perfect biomimicry.
Right. By utilizing the correct ratio of whey, specifically alpha-lactalbumin, which is abundant in breast milk, they provide an easily digestible protein.
And it carries zero of the estrogenic endocrine-disrupting risks associated with soy.
None at all.
So we have the energy sources altered with HFCS and the building blocks altered with soy. Let's move to the structural integrity of the cells themselves, the fats.
Yes, the lipid profile.
Because you cannot build a human brain or nervous system without massive amounts of high-quality dietary fat.
No, fats are absolutely crucial.
But earlier we talked about how natural fats oxidize and go rancid, which ruins that precious shelf life the U.S. market loves.
Right, which brings us back to that visceral scenario you mentioned at the very beginning of the show regarding palm oil.
Yes, the palm oil. Let's dig into that.
Palm oil is perhaps the most glaring example of economic utility overriding biological function.
Because it's so stable, right?
Because it is highly saturated, it is incredibly stable at room temperature, it won't oxidize quickly.
Meaning a can of formula can just sit in a hot warehouse in July for a year without spoiling.
Exactly. It's also one of the cheapest agricultural commodities on the entire planet. So U.S. manufacturers use it to hit the fat macronutrient requirement on the label.
But the label doesn't tell you how the stereochemistry of that fat interacts with the newborn's gut. Explain the soap mechanism again.
Oh, the saponification?
Yeah. How does a dietary fat turn into an unabsorbable mass?
It comes down to the specific molecular architecture of the fat, specifically the triglycerides.
Okay, chemistry time.
A triglyceride is shaped like a capital letter E. It has a glycerol backbone with 3 fatty acid chains attached to the prongs.
Okay, I'm picturing an E.
In human breast milk, the primary saturated fat is palmitic acid, and it is attached to the center prong of the E.
The middle one.
Right. Biochemists call that the SN2 position.
Okay, breast milk has palmitic acid in the middle position. Got it.
Right. When the baby's digestive enzymes, which are called lipases, encounter this breast milk fat, they easily cleave off the top and bottom chains.
Leaving the center palmitic acid intact on the backbone.
Yes. And this specific structure is easily and efficiently absorbed directly through the intestinal wall.
Because that's how biology designed it?
Exactly. Now, let's look at palm oil.
Here we go.
Palm oil also contains palmitic acid, but structurally it is attached to the outside prongs of the E, the SN1 and SN3 positions.
Oh, so it's on the top and bottom.
Right. So when the baby's enzymes attack palm oil, they cleave that palmitic acid completely off the backbone.
And it becomes a free fatty acid floating around in the intestines.
Yes. And that free-floating state is where the disaster happens.
Because free palmitic acid has a high chemical affinity for calcium.
It does. It actively seeks out the calcium that the manufacturer added to the formula to build the baby's bones.
And it binds tightly to it.
Right. This chemical reaction is literally saponification. It creates an insoluble calcium-fat complex.
A literal microscopic soap.
Yes. And because this complex is insoluble, it cannot pass through the intestinal lining. The baby just excretes it.
That is just deeply counterintuitive. I mean, you buy the formula thinking you are delivering calcium for skeletal growth.
But the shelf-stabilizing fat is acting as a chemical sponge.
Soaking up the calcium and carrying it right out in the diaper.
It's a massive nutritional loss.
And this isn't just a loss of nutrition. It actively causes physical pain.
Immense discomfort. The formation of these insoluble soaps in the gut alters the consistency of the stool.
Causing severe constipation.
Constipation, bloating, and intense gas. When we see infants suffering from what is colloquially called colic, or general unexplained fussiness after feeding,
we have to consider that the very molecular structure of their food is causing acute gastrointestinal distress.
Absolutely. The food itself is hurting them.
So what is the alternative here? How does European regulation handle the lipid requirement without creating intestinal soap?
European formulations aggressively limit or entirely ban palm oil.
Naturally.
Instead, they rely heavily on dairy fats. Some of the most advanced European formulas actually utilize what is known as milk fat globule membranes, or MFGM.
Milk fat globule membranes.
Yeah. They extract the intact fat globules from high-quality cow's milk. which naturally contains palmitic acid in that crucial, highly absorbable SN2 position.
Mimicking breast milk perfectly.
Exactly. They also blend in carefully cold-pressed oils.
And this biomimetic approach ensures maximum calcium absorption for bone density.
And it completely bypasses the saponification issue, resulting in vastly improved digestion.
It's a fundamental difference in respect for the infant's physiology.
It really is.
But let's peel back another layer. We've talked about the macros, the carbs, proteins, and fats. What about the additives?
Ah, the stabilizers holding this mixture together.
Because if you're pulling apart the natural structure of food to make it cheaper, you usually have to add chemicals to artificially glue it back together.
This brings us to the structural and chemical additives, and specifically a very controversial ingredient highlighted in the source data, carrageenan.
Carrageenan. Okay, I've seen that listed on the back of conventional almond milks and ice creams.
It's very common in processed foods.
It's derived from seaweed, isn't it? That sounds natural enough on the surface.
It is extracted from red seaweed, yes.
So why is it in baby formula, and why is it a problem?
It's used in the U.S. as a thickening and emulsifying agent. In liquid formulas, it prevents the fats and the waters from separating over time.
Ensuring the product looks uniform and smooth when the parent pours it into the bottle.
Right, it's purely an aesthetic and shelf life additive.
But natural origin does not equal biologically safe.
Not at all. The gastrointestinal tract of a newborn is highly permeable.
The tight junctions between the cells lining the gut haven't fully closed yet.
Exactly. When you introduce a high molecular weight compound like carrageen into this incredibly delicate environment, it acts as a severe irritant,
irritating the actual tissue.
The research indicates that carrageen triggers a pronounced inflammatory immune response in the epithelial cells lining the intestines.
So it's actively causing localized inflammation in a gut that is trying to figure out how to digest food for the very first time.
Yes, and chronic inflammation in the neonatal gut is directly linked to increased intestinal permeability,
commonly known as leaky gut.
Right. And the early development of irritable bowel syndrome, or IBS.
But the damage goes beyond just the physical lining, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It deeply impacts the microbiome.
It does. Let's really dig into the microbiome here.
Let's do it. Because the modern scientific consensus is realizing that the infant gut isn't just a digestion tube. It is the headquarters of the human immune system.
It is the absolute command center.
Explain how that works.
When a baby is born, their gut is relatively sterile. During those first few months, it must be rapidly colonized by trillions of beneficial bacteria.
Specifically strains like bifidobacteria, right?
Yes, bifidobacteria are crucial. These bacteria don't just sit there and digest food, they actively communicate with the baby's immune cells.
Like a training program.
Exactly. They train the T regulatory cells, teaching the immune system how to differentiate between a harmless protein and a dangerous pathogen.
So this initial seeding of the microbiome essentially dictates the child's lifelong susceptibility to allergies, asthma, and autoimmune diseases.
It sets the baseline for their entire life.
So when a U.S. manufacturer pumps formula full of carrageen to make it look smooth, and adds artificial preservatives designed to kill bacteria so it doesn't spoil in the warehouse, what happens to that critical colonization process?
You induce a massive state of dysbiosis.
Dysbiosis.
Artificial preservatives are inherently designed to halt bacterial replication. When ingested, they do not discriminate.
They suppress the growth of the beneficial bifidobacteria just as effectively as they suppress spoilage organisms.
Exactly. Furthermore, the inflammation caused by carrageenan degrades the mucin layer of the gut,
which is the actual physical habitat where these beneficial bacteria are supposed to anchor and thrive.
Right. You are chemically sterilizing and inflaming the exact environment required to build the child's immune system.
Which is why, I assume, the European authorities look at carrageenan and preservatives quite differently.
Carrageenan is completely banned in European infant formulas.
Banned, not just limited.
Banned entirely. Their precautionary principle dictates that an ingredient used purely for visual texture, which carries a known risk of degrading the gut lining and disrupting immune-modulating bacteria.
It simply cannot be justified.
It has no place in infant nutrition. They rely on the natural emulsification properties of the high-quality dairy proteins and fats we discussed earlier.
This entire deep dive is basically a masterclass in the butterfly effect of industrial food science.
It really is all connected.
A minor tweak to save a few cents on extraction or to extend the shelf life by a few months cascades into metabolic dysfunction, hormonal disruption, skeletal calcium loss, and immune system degradation.
It's a heavy realization.
It is. And if you are listening to this right now, especially if you are currently feeling a child or preparing to. It is incredibly easy to feel overwhelmed by this data.
It can feel very discouraging.
It feels like the system is rigged against biology. But the entire purpose of extracting this knowledge from Brecka's podcast and the surrounding research is to pivot from awareness to absolute empowerment.
Exactly. The goal isn't anxiety, it's operational clarity.
Knowledge is power, but only if you know how to apply it.
Right. Once you understand the mechanisms, the why and the how, the ingredient label transforms from a confusing list of scientific terms into a highly readable map.
You can navigate this.
You absolutely can.
So let's build out the action plan. Let's act as the listener's highly technical shopping guides. When we pick up a can of formula, what is the exact checklist we are running it against? We know to look at the carbohydrates first.
Step 1. Verify the energy source. You are actively scanning the ingredients for lactose.
It should ideally be the first and only carbohydrate listed.
Yes. Conversely, you are treating any mention of high fructose corn syrup solids, or sucrose as an immediate red flag. Put it back on the shelf.
And what about maltodextrin? I see that on a lot of labels that claim to be reduced sugar.
Maltodextrin must also be avoided.
Why? It's not sugar, right?
It is a highly processed polysaccharide, often derived from corn or wheat, used as a cheap filler.
But it acts like a sugar.
Even though it's technically a complex carbohydrate, its glycemic index is incredibly high, sometimes even higher than table sugar. It is rapidly absorbed and will spike the infant's blood glucose and insulin levels, almost exactly like HFCS, driving that same metabolic dysfunction.
Okay, so we've secured the lactose energy source.
Yeah.
No HSCS, no sucrose, no maltodextrin.
Right.
Next on the action plan, the fats. We know to avoid palm oil to prevent saponification, the soap issue.
Yes, avoid palm oil.
But the data also heavily emphasizes how the essential fatty acids like DHA are actually extracted. This gets into some pretty intense industrial chemistry.
It does. DHA, or docosahexaenoic acid, is a vital omega-3 fatty acid required for the structural formation of the infant's brain and retinas.
It's crucial stuff.
But the issue is the solvent extraction process used by many massive agricultural suppliers. The data explicitly warns against consuming oils extracted using hexane.
Break down hexane for us. What is it, and why is it near our food supply?
Hexane is a highly volatile neurotoxic petroleum byproduct.
Neurotoxic petroleum byproduct in baby food.
Yeah. In cheap industrial manufacturing, seeds are bathed in hexane solvent to chemically extract every last drop of oil out of them, maximizing yield.
Then what?
The oil is then heated to evaporate the hexane. However, trace amounts of this neurotoxic solvent can and do remain in the final oil product.
And while the FDA might consider those trace amounts generally recognized as safe, or GRSS for an adult,
Filtering a petroleum byproduct through an infant's developing urological system is an entirely different risk profile.
Precisely. Therefore, the action step is to seek out formulas that utilize naturally sourced fats.
Or explicitly state that their oils are expeller pressed or extracted without the use of chemical solvents.
This brings up a great point about navigating marketing language. A can of formula might say wholesome, natural, or premium.
Those words mean almost nothing.
Right. They have almost zero legally binding regulatory weight in the U.S. What labels actually mandate the exclusion of these chemical processes?
This is where rigorous certifications become your shield. The data advises relying strictly on the USDA organic certification, or, even better if you have access to it, the EU organic label.
Let's expand on the EU organic standard, because we've established that the baseline in Europe is higher. What does that specific certification guarantee?
The EU organic certification is arguably the most stringent agricultural standard globally.
Really?
Yes. If a formula holds that label, it guarantees by law that the product is free from genetically modified organisms.
Okay.
It legally caps pesticide residue at practically undetectable levels, which is far stricter than U.S. thresholds.
That's a huge relief.
It mandates that the cows producing the dairy must be pasture-raised and not treated with preventative antibiotics or synthetic growth hormones.
The baseline for the raw materials is just elevated.
And crucially, regarding our previous point, EU organic regulations strictly prohibit the use of petrochemical solvents like hexane in the processing of any ingredient.
It is a comprehensive safety net. Now, what about actively building that immune command center we talked about? We discussed how conventional U.S. formulas can sterilize the gut with preservatives. How do we reverse engineer that and actively support the microbiome.
You look for formulas that have intelligently integrated prebiotics and probiotics, but you have to be specific.
What are we looking for?
Look for the inclusion of human milk oligosaccharides, or HMOs.
HMOs. What exactly are those in the context of the gut?
HMOs are incredibly complex prebiotic fibers naturally found in massive quantities in human breast milk.
Right.
What's fascinating is that the baby's body cannot digest them at all. They pass entirely through the stomach intact.
Wait, really? So why are they there?
Their sole biological purpose is to travel down into the lower intestines and act as the specific, perfect food source for those beneficial bifidobacteria.
Oh, wow. They exist just to feed the microbiome.
Exactly. By choosing a formula that includes synthesized HMOs and high-quality probiotic strains, you aren't just feeding the baby's cells.
You are actively engineering and feeding their immune system.
Crowding out pathogenic bacteria and reinforcing the integrity of the gut lining.
So we have the label reading masterclass here, lactose only. No HFCS or maltodextrin.
No soy isolate.
Right. No palm oil or carrageenan. Demand expeller press oils free of hexane. Rely on EU organic or strict USDA organic certifications, and prioritize HMOs.
That's the checklist.
But there is a final, highly practical logistical hurdle here. Many parents, armed with this data, immediately decide to simply buy European formula online from a third-party website.
Which introduces a new set of risks.
Yes. The source data has a very strict warning about the gray market.
It is a vital warning. The supply chain is just as important as the ingredient list.
Why is that?
If you decide to utilize European formula, you must verify that the product meets formal FDA import standards and is being brought in through authorized, temperature-controlled, legal channels.
Because if you buy it from an unverified online reseller, you lose all visibility into how that product was handled.
Exactly. You could be buying the most pristine, biomimetic, EU organic formula in the world.
But if that third-party reseller shipped it in the uninsulated cargo hold of a freighter,
and it sat in a sweltering 110-degree shipping container for 6 weeks at a port,
those delicate natural dairy fats we praised earlier will have completely oxidized and gone rancid.
the probiotics will be dead. The nutritional profile is destroyed.
You must ensure you are using vendors who maintain strict, verified cold chain and import compliance to protect the integrity of the biology inside that can.
It requires vigilance at every single step, from the biochemistry to the supply chain.
It really does. We have covered an immense expanse of data today, unraveling the dense biological and regulatory threads that make up infant nutrition.
We covered a lot of ground.
When we pull all of this together and look at the macro picture, what is the ultimate takeaway from this deep dive?
The overarching narrative is the undeniable friction between industrial efficiency and human physiology.
It's a clash of priorities.
On one side of the Atlantic, we have a framework that largely permits the human body to be used as a shock absorber for cheap manufacturing.
Forcing an infant's liver to process fructose, their endocrine system to manage phytoestrogens.
And their gut to wrestle with saponified palm oil and inflammatory seaweed derivatives.
While on the other side,
We see a regulatory environment operating on the precautionary principle, forcing the manufacturing process to bend to the non-negotiable realities of human biology and the biomimicry of breast milk.
it fundamentally changes how you view the food system as a whole.
It really does.
Whether you are actively navigating the formula aisle for a child, or you are simply a consumer trying to understand why modern metabolic disease is skyrocketing, this deep dive proves that we cannot take the baseline for granted.
The safety net of a grocery store shelf is an illusion.
We have to read the labels. We have to understand the mechanisms. We have to demand that biology dictates the ingredients, not the profit margins of the supply chain, which leaves us with a final, highly provocative thought to explore on your own.
And this is something everyone should think about.
If major regulatory bodies and massive agricultural industries are perfectly willing to utilize such profoundly disruptive, metabolically damaging, and hormonally active ingredients in the absolute sole source of nutrition for our most vulnerable population.
Newborn babies whose brains and bodies are actively under construction.
Exactly. What on earth is happening in the rest of the grocery store?
It's a chilling question.
If the baseline for infants is compromised by economics, what completely different industrially modified, solvent-extracted ingredients are hiding right now in the everyday foundational foods sitting in your adult pantry?
Just depending purely on the regulatory loopholes of the country you happen to live in.
It forces a complete recalibration of how we view our environment.
If they cut corners on the foundation, the entire house warrants a relentless, educated scrutiny.
It absolutely does. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this breakdown of the mechanisms leaves you feeling incredibly informed, highly empowered, and ready to analyze that next nutritional label with absolute clarity. Keep questioning the consensus, stay intensely curious, and we will catch you on the next one.